Hello everybody. We continue with reading the Bible with pretty interesting part about Joseph in Egypt. So, when Joseph was taken down to Egypt, a certain Egyptian, Potiphar, a courtier of Pharaoh and his chief steward, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. But since the Lord was with him, Joseph got on very well and was assigned to the household of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and brought him success in whatever he did, he took a liking to Joseph and made him his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his household and entrusted to him all his possessions. From the moment that he put him in charge of his household and all his possessions, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. In fact, the Lord's blessing was on everything he owned, both inside the house and out. Having left everything he owned in Joseph's charge, he gave no thought with Joseph there to anything but the food he ate. Now Joseph was strikingly handsome in countenance and body. After a time, his master's wife began to look fondly at him and said, "Lie with me." But he refused. "As long as I am here," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, but has entrusted to me all he owns. He wields no more authority in this house than I do, and he has withheld from me nothing but yourself, since you are his wife. How then could I commit so great a wrong and thus stand condemned before God?" Although she tried to entice him day after day, he would not agree to lie beside her or even stay near her. One such day, when Joseph came into the house to do his work, and none of the household servants were then in the house, she laid hold of him by his cloak, saying, "Lie with me." But leaving the cloak in her hand, he got away from her and ran outside. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and he fled outside, she screamed for her household servants and told them, "Look, my husband has brought in a Hebrew slave to make sport of us. He came in here to lie with me, but I cried out as loud as I could. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran away outside." She kept the cloak with her until his master came home. Then she told him the same story. "The Hebrew slave whom you brought here broke in on me to make sport of me. But when I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and fled outside." As soon as the master heard his wife's story about how his slave had treated her, he became enraged. He seized Joseph and threw him into the jail where the royal prisoners were confined. But even while he was in prison, the Lord remained with Joseph. He showed him kindness by making the chief jailer well disposed toward him. The chief jailer put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners in the jail, and everything that had to be done there was done under his management. The chief jailer did not concern himself with anything at all that was in Joseph's charge, since the Lord was with him and brought success to all he did. Some time afterward, the royal cupbearer and baker gave offense to their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two courtiers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the house of the chief steward, the same jail where Joseph was confined. The chief steward assigned Joseph to them, and he became their attendant. After they had been in custody for some time, The cup-bearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the jail, both had dreams on the same night, each dream with its own meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he noticed that they looked disturbed. So he asked Pharaoh's courtiers, who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" They answered him, "We have had dreams, but there is no one to interpret them for us." Joseph said to them, "Surely, interpretations come from God. Please tell the dreams to me." Then the chief cup-bearer told Joseph his dream. "In my dream," he said, "I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. It had barely budded with its blossoms came out, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, so I took the grapes, pressed them out into his cup, and put it in Pharaoh's hand." Joseph said to him, "This is what it means. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your post. You will be handing Pharaoh his cup as you formerly used to do when you were his cupbearer. So if you will still remember, when all is well with you, that I was here with you, please do me the favor of mentioning me to Pharaoh to get me out of this place. The truth is that I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and here I have not done anything for which I should have been put into a dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given this favorable interpretation, he said to him, "I too had a dream. In it I had 3 wicker baskets on my head. In the top one were all kinds of bakery products for Pharaoh, but the birds were pecking at them out of the basket on my head." Joseph said to him in reply, "This is what it means. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and have you impaled on a stake, and the birds will be pecking the flesh from your body." And in fact, on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, when he gave a banquet to all his staff, with his courtiers around him, he lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and chief baker. He restored the chief cupbearer to his office, so that he again handed the cup to Pharaoh, but the chief baker has impaled just as Joseph had told them in his interpretation. Yet the chief cupbearer gave no thought to Joseph, he had forgotten him. After a lapse of 2 years, Pharaoh had a dream. He saw himself standing by the Nile, when up out of the Nile came 7 cows, handsome and fat. They grazed in the reed grass. Behind them 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile, and standing on the bank of the Nile beside the others, the ugly gaunt cows ate up the 7 handsome fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had another dream. He saw 7 ears of grain, fat and healthy, growing on a single stalk. Behind them sprouted 7 ears of grain, thin and blasted by the east wind, and the 7 thin ears swallowed up the 7 fat, healthy ears. Then Pharaoh woke up to find it was only a dream. Next morning his spirit was agitated. So he summoned all the magicians and sages of Egypt and recounted his dreams to them, but no one could interpret his dreams for him. Then the chief cupbearer spoke up and said to Pharaoh, "On this occasion I am reminded of my negligence. Once when Pharaoh was angry, he put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the chief steward. Later we both had dreams on the same night, and each of our dreams had its own meaning. There with us was a Hebrew youth, a slave of the chief steward, and when we told him our dreams, he interpreted them for us and explained for each of us the meaning of his dream. And it turned out, just as he had told us, I was restored to my post, but the other man was impaled. Pharaoh therefore had Joseph summoned, and they hurriedly brought him from the dungeon. After he shaved and changed his clothes, he came into Pharaoh's presence. Pharaoh then said to him, I had certain dreams that no one can interpret, but I hear it said of you that the moment you are told a dream, you can interpret it. It is not I, Joseph replied to Pharaoh, but God who will give Pharaoh the right answer. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile, when up from the Nile came 7 cows, fat and well-formed, they grazed in the reed grass. Behind them came 7 other cows, scrawny, most ill-formed and gaunt. Never have I seen such ugly specimens as these in all the land of Egypt. The gaunt, ugly cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. But when they had consumed them, no one could tell that they had done so, because they looked as ugly as before. Then I woke up. In another dream, I saw 7 ears of grain, fat and healthy, growing on a single stalk. Behind them sprouted 7 ears of grain, shriveled and thin and blasted by the east wind, and the 7 thin ears swallowed up the 7 healthy ears. I have spoken to the magicians, but none of them can give me an explanation. Joseph said to Pharaoh, both of Pharaoh's dreams have the same meaning. God has thus foretold to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 healthy cows are 7 years, and the 7 healthy ears are 7 years, the same in each dream. So also the 7 thin, ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, as are the 7 thin, wind-blasted ears. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I told Pharaoh. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are now coming throughout the land of Egypt. But this will be followed by 7 years of famine, when all the abundance in the land of Egypt will be forgotten. When the famine has ravaged the land, no trace of the abundance will be found in the land because of the famine that follows it. So utterly severe will that famine be. That Pharaoh had the same dream twice means that the matter has been reaffirmed by God and that God will soon bring it about. Therefore, let Pharaoh seek out a wise and discerning man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Pharaoh should also take action to appoint overseers so as to regiment the land during the 7 years of abundance. They should husband all the food of the coming good years, collecting the grain under Pharaoh's authority to be stored in the towns for food. This food will serve as a reserve for the country against the 7 years of famine that are to follow in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish in the famine. This advice pleased Pharaoh and all his officials. Could we find another like him? Pharaoh asked his officials, a man so endowed with the Spirit of God. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, no one can be as wise and discerning as you are. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people shall dart at your command. Only in respect to the throne shall I outrank you. Herewith Pharaoh told Joseph, I place you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. With that, Pharaoh took off his signet ring and put it on Joseph's finger. He had him dressed in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. He then had him ride in the chariot of his vizier, and they shouted Abrek before him. Thus was Joseph installed over the whole land of Egypt. I, Pharaoh, proclaim, he told Joseph, that without your approval no one shall move hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also bestowed the name of Zaphnath Paneah on Joseph, and he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of Heliopolis. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. After Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he traveled throughout the land of Egypt. During the 7 years of plenty, when the land produced abundant crops, He husbanded all the food of these years of plenty that the land of Egypt was enjoying and stored it in the towns, placing in each town the crops of the field around it. Joseph garnered the grain in quantities like the sands of the sea, so was that at last he stopped measuring it, for it was beyond measure. Before the famine years set in, Joseph became the father of two sons, born to him by Asenath, daughter of Potipherah, priest of Heliopolis. He named his firstborn Manasseh, meaning God has made me forget entirely the sufferings I endured at the hands of my family, and the second he named Ephraim, meaning God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. When the 7 years of abundance enjoyed by the land of Egypt came to an end, the 7 years of famine set in, just as Joseph had predicted. Although there was famine in all the other countries, food was available throughout the land of Egypt. When hunger came to be felt throughout the land of Egypt and the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, Pharaoh directed all the Egyptians to go to Joseph and do whatever he told them. When the famine had spread throughout the land, Joseph opened all the cities that had grain and rationed it to the Egyptians, since the famine had gripped the land of Egypt. In fact, all the world came to Joseph to obtain rations of grain, for famine had gripped the whole world. When Jacob learned that grain rations were available in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep gaping at one another? I hear," he went on, "that rations of grain are available in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, that we may stay alive rather than die of hunger." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy an emergency supply of grain from Egypt. It was only Joseph's full brother Benjamin that Jacob did not send with the rest, for he thought some disaster might befall him. Thus, since there was famine in the land of Canaan also, the sons of Israel were among those who came to procure rations. It was Joseph, as governor of the country, who dispensed the rations to all the people. When Joseph's brothers came and knelt down before him with their faces to the ground, he recognized them as soon as he saw them. But he concealed his own identity from them and spoke sternly to them. "Where do you come from?" he asked them. They answered, "From the land of Canaan, to procure food." When Joseph recognized his brothers, although they did not recognize him, he was reminded of the dreams he had about them. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." "No, my lord," they replied. "On the contrary, your servants have come to procure food. All of us are sons of the same man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he answered them, "No, not so. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." "We your servants," they said, "we 12 brother sons of a certain man in Canaan, but the youngest one is at present with our father, and the other one is gone." "It is just as I said," Joseph persisted. "You are spies. This is how you shall be tested. Unless your younger brother comes here, I swear by the life of Pharaoh that you shall not live here. So send one of your number to get your brother, while the rest of you stay here under arrest. Thus shall your words be tested for their truth. If they are untrue as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." With that, he locked them up in the guardhouse for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and you shall live, for I am a good God-fearing man. If you have been honest, only one of your brothers need to be confined in this prison, while the rest of you may go and take home provisions for your starving families. But you must come back to me with your youngest brother. Your words will thus be verified, and you will not die." To this they agreed. To one another, however, they said, "Alas, we are being punished because of our brother. We saw the anguish of his heart when he pleaded with us, yet we paid no heed. That is why this anguish has now come upon us." "Didn't I tell you," broke in Reuben, "not to do wrong to the boy? but you wouldn't listen. Now comes the reckoning for his blood." They did not know, of course, that Joseph understood what they said, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. But turning away from them, he wept. When he was able to speak to them again, he said he had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to have their containers filled with grain, their money replaced in each one's sack, and provisions given them for their journey. After this had been done for them, they loaded their donkeys with the rations and departed. At the night encampment, when one of them opened his bag to give his donkey some fodder, he was surprised to see his money in the mouth of his bag. "My money has been returned," he cried out to his brothers. "Here it is in my bag." At that their hearts sank. Trembling, they asked one another, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they got back to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. "The man who is Lord of the country," they said, "spoke to us sternly and put us in custody as if we were spying on the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men, we have never been spies. There were 12 of us brothers, sons of the same father, but one is gone, and the youngest one is at present with our father in the land of Canaan.' Then the man who is Lord of the country said to us, 'This is how I shall know if you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, while the rest of you go home with rations for your starving families. When you come back to me with your youngest brother, and I know that you are honest men and not spies, I will restore your brother to you, and you may move about freely in the land.' When they were emptying their sacks, there in each one's sack was his money bag. At the sight of their money bags, they and their father were dismayed. Their father Jacob said to them, 'Must you make me childless? Joseph is gone and Simeon is gone, and now you would take away Benjamin. Why must such things always happen to me?' Then Reuben told his father, 'Put him in my care, and I will bring him back to you. You may kill my own 2 sons if I do not return him to you.' But Jacob replied, 'My son shall not go down with you. Now that his full brother is dead, he is the only one left. If some disaster should befall him on the journey you must make, you will send my white head down to the nether world in grief.' Now the famine in the land grew more severe. So when they had used up all the rations they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, 'Go back and procure us a little more food.' But Judah replied, 'The men strictly warned us, you shall not appear in my presence unless your brother is with you. If you are willing to let our brother go with us, and will go down to procure food for you. But if you are not willing, we will not go down, because the man told us, you shall not appear in my presence unless your brother is with you.' Israel demanded, 'Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man that you had another brother?' They answered, 'The man kept asking about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living? Do you have another brother?' We had to answer his questions. How could we know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down here'?" Then Judah urged his father Israel, "Let the boy go with me, that we may be off and on our way if you and we and our children are to keep from starving to death. I myself will stand surety for him. You can hold me responsible for him. If I fail to bring him back, to set him in your presence, you can hold it against me forever. Had we not daily, we could have been there and back twice by now." Their father Israel then told them, "If it must be so, then do this. Put some of the land's best products in your baggage and take them down to the man as gifts, some balm and honey, gum and resin, and pistachios and almonds. Also take extra money along, for you must return the amount that was put back in the mouth of your bags. It may have been a mistake. Take your brother too and be off on your way back to the man. May God Almighty dispose the man to be merciful toward you, so that he may let your other brother go as well as Benjamin. As for me, if I am to suffer bereavement, I shall suffer it. So the men got the gifts, took double the amount of money with them, and accompanied by Benjamin, were off on their way down to Egypt to present themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he told his head steward, "Take these men into the house and have an animal slaughtered and prepared, for they are to dine with me at noon." Doing as Joseph has ordered, the steward conducted the men to Joseph's house. But on being led to his house, they became apprehensive. It must be, they thought, on account of the money put back in our bags the first time, that we are taken inside. They want to use it as a pretext to attack us and take our donkeys and seize us as slaves. So they went up to Joseph's head steward and talked to him at the entrance of the house. "If you please, sir," they said, "we came down here once before to procure food. But when we arrived at the night's encampment and opened our bags, there was each man's money in the mouth of his bag, our money in the full amount. We have now brought it back. We have brought our money to procure food with. We do not know who put the first money in our bags." "Be at ease," he replied. "You have no need to fear. Your God and the God of your father must have put treasures in your bags for you. As for your money, I receive it." With that, he led Simeon out to them. The steward then brought the men inside Joseph's house. He gave them water to bathe their feet and got fodder for their donkeys. Then they set out their gifts to await Joseph's arrival at noon, for they had heard that they were to dine there. When Joseph came home, they presented him with the gifts they had brought inside, while they bowed down before him to the ground. After inquiring how they were, he asked them, "And how is your aged father, of whom you spoke? Is he still in good health?" "Your servant, our father, is thriving and still in good health," they said as they bowed respectfully. When Joseph's eye fell on his full brother Benjamin, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, of whom you told me?" Then he said to him, "May God be gracious to you, my boy." With that, Joseph had to hurry out, for he was so overcome with affection for his brother that he was on the verge of tears. He went into a private room and wept there. After washing his face, he repaired and, now in control of himself, gave the order, "Serve the meal." It was served separately to him, to the brothers, and to the Egyptians who partook of his board. Egyptians may not eat with Hebrews, that is abhorrent to them. When they were seated by his directions according to their age, from the oldest to the youngest, they looked at one another in amazement. And as portions were brought to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as large as anyone else's. So they drank freely and made merry with him. Okay, we stop here. The story about Joseph in Egypt is not finished yet, but we continue next week, as we always do, about one half of hour each week. Thank you for watching. And so reading the Bible is important to understand our spiritual life. So as I told, I shall maybe sometimes publish some other videos, maybe sometimes do some comments, but mainly I shall first read the Bible, and then we are going for for more open discussions later in few years, if God will admit to live that we live on this earth so long. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching. Please make your comments. Please like or dislike my videos as you always do, and see you next week.